We looked today at Matthew chapter 8, verses 18 through 34. And verse 18 starts with the word now. So to me, this is it isn't just immediately after this, what we talked about yesterday, but, at another point in time. Yeah, but Jesus sees these great crowds around him, and he says to his disciples that he wants to go to the other side. And, here it doesn't say the other side of what, but we know that it's the other side of a lake. But at this point in time, before they get in the boat, it says in Matthew, it says, a scribe came to him and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus has this response, that foxes have holes, birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. And then another person says, "I'll follow you, but let me go bury my father first." And Jesus seems kind of cold when he says, "Let the dead bury their own dead." But, there is discrepancies. Was this man's father already dead, or was he saying, "I'll do it, at a later date"? But regardless, Jesus is saying to these two people and to each and every one of us that following Jesus takes a commitment. There is a definite, it isn't just to say that, I'll do it when it feels convenient for me, but to be a follower of Christ, to be a member of a church, to be a member of any organization, really, it takes a commitment. It takes the will to put some effort forth in what it is. And, our churches can't survive without people that are committed to them. And my faith can't survive unless I am committed to the fact that Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and to practice that as best I can on a daily basis. But it isn't to say that, I've got time for that later, but it's now. And it takes that commitment, and it isn't just something that when it's, as I said, when it's convenient, but and there are a lot of people that don't understand that, particularly I think when it comes to, say, being a member of an organization, and the commitment that it takes, the determination that you're going to be there for the meetings, you're going to support it with your acts, with your finances, with whatever it takes that you can support it with, that you're going to be a vital part of it. And if each one of us doesn't take part, things will fail in a hurry. Then it says, verse 23 starts out, when Jesus got into the boat, his disciples followed him. And then, we had the windstorm on the sea coming. And this is a very familiar passage too. The waves and the wind are so strong, the boat is being swamped, and the disciples are afraid. They're bailing water and doing everything they can, and Jesus is sleeping. And you wonder, how can Jesus sleep, when there's so much going on that way? And, and sometimes we too wonder, well, God, where are you in all these times of trouble and stuff in my life? Where are you when this is happening? And, it gives us that impression that maybe, God isn't so active in our lives, or God doesn't care so much. But, for the most part, God is with us in and through all things. And sometimes we don't trust that. And these disciples, at this point in time, did they really understand the totality of who Jesus is and the powers that Jesus has? I don't know that, but they come to him when, they've done everything they can, and they want Jesus to be able to get this rest. They can see that he needs this rest, but they finally come and they said, "Lord, don't you care that we're perishing?" So they give him this title. They acknowledge, "Lord, Master, don't you care?" And I'm not sure, what did the disciples expect that Jesus would do? Did they really expect that he would get up and say, "Oh, ye of little faith," and tell the winds to quit and the waves to be still, and boom, here we'd have perfectly calm waters and no wind? It says when Jesus did that, they were astonished. They were afraid. They were amazed. This is what the word that Matthew uses. They were amazed. What sort of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? They come to understand more that Jesus isn't just a man, throughout the rest of Jesus' ministry. But, they come to Jesus when, they've tried. They've done basically all they can on their own. They need more help, and they come to Jesus. And we are oftentimes the same, and it reminds me of a person when the pastor asked him, when this person was in the hospital, pastor was going to leave from a visit, says, "Can I pray?" "Oh, I'm not that sick yet." No, not ready to turn to God yet. We don't need that much help, or maybe don't want to bother him. But the reality is that, God wants to hear what's going on in our lives. God is always open to our prayer, and whether it's prayers of praise and thanks or prayers of needs and desires, combinations of whatever, but we don't ever have to wait to come to God. And then when you get to the other side of the sea, another very familiar story, except that Matthew tells it a little bit differently than Mark and Luke. So this is in Mark 5 and in Luke 8. Jesus comes to the other side of the sea, to the land of the Gadarenes or Gerasenes. It's a different way of spelling or saying the same place. And in Matthew's gospel, as we read it today, there were two men who were so fiercely possessed with demons that no one could pass that way. And they shout out to Jesus, here as the others, "What have you to do with us, Son of God?" Or the one of them is, "What have you to do with us, Jesus Christ, the Son of God?" The demons recognize Jesus as God, Son of God. The demons know who he is. And we see that often in the Gospels as these are written, that, the demons recognize Jesus even though maybe the people don't so much. But, what have you to do with us? Have you come to torment us? And, did Jesus know that he was going to encounter these demon-possessed men, or man, depending on which gospel you read, when he came across the sea? Was this another one of the acts of God that is done so that these early disciples would really begin to see the power and the glory of the Son of God, Jesus Christ? But these men ask, "What have you to do with us?" And in Matthew's gospel, we don't have any response from Jesus yet, but it says a large herd of swine was feeding. The demons begged him, "If you cast us out, send us to the swine." They wanted a body to possess. That if they couldn't possess the body or bodies of these men, they wanted to possess the swine to destroy them. This is the purpose of the demon, is to cause doubt and self-doubt and destruction. And this is what the devil works on us each and every day for as well. And we know that when Jesus, in Matthew's gospel, it says, Jesus says, "Go." And he said to them, "Go." That's just, boom, just one little two-letter word, "Go." And the demons rush out of the men, leave them perfectly normal and sane again, and into the swine, and cause the pigs to run down the steep bank and into the sea. And this whole herd of swine perished. So what was the point for the demons to leave the men and go into the swine if they just drove them to total destruction? It just, it makes you think about what the devil is working for. He isn't working for good for anything. He isn't working for peace and harmony and togetherness. Is working on destruction and despair and pain and sorrow. And, these are the things that happen when we listen to the devil. The swineherd had seen this happening, and he runs back to town, and he tells all of the people. And the people come, and they're overfilled with joy, right? No, it says the whole town came out, and when they saw him, they begged him to leave the neighborhood. And it's kind of the rest of the townspeople are saying, "What have you to do with us?" We see what happened with these men that were demon-possessed, and how they have been changed. what have you to do with us? What change do we need to have in our lives? And they begged him to leave. And Jesus will get in the boat and he goes back to the other side. But, you know, they didn't come and rejoice that these demons had been kicked out of the man. And you know, for this land of the Gadarenes, the pigs were, I mean, they were food, they were employment for this swineherd. And, you know, for the Jews, the destruction of a herd of pigs would be no real big deal because they're unclean animals anyway. You know, they're just, you know, kind of a nuisance and can't eat them, can't do anything else with them, just got to feed them. But for these people, you know, they were a part of their diet. They were a part of their work. And so it was, you know, it's a totally different way of looking at things. And we sometimes forget that this, you know, when we look and we say, well, why wouldn't these people want Jesus to be in their midst? And it's basically, I would guess, I would say, you know, shouldn't say I guess. It's basically because they're looking at Jesus and saying, what changes need to be done in our lives? And this is something that each and every one of us needs to do as well. What is it in our life that we need to change for God? And that's a part of the repenting, turning ourselves around to what is it that's going on in my life today that I need to address in my relationship with God. And this is one of the things that, you know, the Bible points us to all of the time. And it's our relationship with God. And knowing, as we talked earlier with the scribe and this other person who wanted to follow, it's a commitment. And it's, you know, to do it now.